In 1968, a talk show segment hosted by Murray features two epidemiologists, one of whom is Dr. Newman. They begin discussing the prospect of a global pandemic, and Dr. Newman asserts his belief that humans will always overcome any potential threats. However, he makes an unusual claim that fungus will pose more of a threat to humankind than any other microorganism, since fungi tend to be psychoactively, as opposed to physiologically, pathogenic. He describes a Cordyceps unilateralis, a fungus that can take control of an ant's brain, kill the ant, and keep the ant from decomposing. His colleague, Dr. Schoenhist, claims that this type of fungus is not known to affect humans. Dr. Newman agrees, but insinuates that global warming may force fungi to adapt to higher temperatures, by which a single genetic mutation in Ascomycete, Candida, ergot, Aspergillus, or Cordyceps would allow the fungi to invade the human brain and cause a global pandemic affecting billions of people. After an awkward silence, the talk show abruptly cuts to commercial break. On September 26, 2003, in Austin, Texas, Sarah Miller cooks breakfast for her father Joel. As they enjoy breakfast, Tommy, Joel's brother, joins them. In light of a construction project falling behind schedule, Joel and Tommy concur that it's imperative to work a double shift that day in order to regain ground and maintain financial stability. Sarah is disheartened as she will be unable to celebrate her father's birthday with him. However, Joel mitigates the situation by pledging to bring home a cake that evening. Breakfast is cut short and Sarah gets ready for school. She grabs $60 and a broken watch from Joel's room, and she plays with the blade of his knife. As Joel packs the car, Sarah makes a deal with her neighbor, Danny Adler, to come over after school and bake cookies with his wife Connie Adler. After school ends, she takes the bus to Lone Star Watch and Jewelry. Sarah is surprised at the jeweler watchmaker Nasser's offer to fix her watch for only $20. As he fixes it, police cars can be seen speeding by the store, and Tahira walks in demanding that the store be closed. She returns the repaired watch to Sarah and ushers her out of the store. Sarah arrives at the Adler household and questions Connie about the heightened presence of law enforcement in the city. Connie suggests it is a result of moral decay in the community and believes that people need to embrace Christianity as the solution. After baking cookies with Connie, Sarah works on homework while Connie feeds her mother, Nana, who seems to have a progressive form of dementia or aphasia, in the adjacent room. Connie leaves to take the cookies out of the oven, and Sarah enters the room with Nana, checking out Connie's DVD collection. As Sarah approaches Connie to ask if she can borrow one of Danny's DVDs, Curtis and Viper 2, she is unaware that in the other room, Nana is turning into one of the infected. Connie agrees to lend her a DVD, and Sarah mentions that she needs to leave soon as Joel will be back soon. Connie offers her some cookies as a snack before she goes. While walking out, she notices that the Adler's dog, Mercy, is staring intently at Nana. On her way home, Sarah notices fighter jets flying overhead. Joel comes home an hour late without a cake, much to Sarah's disappointment. However, she quickly cheers up and gives him his two birthday presents, a watch she had fixed for him, and a copy of Curtis and Viper 2 from Danny Adler. The two watch the movie together on the couch, and Sarah falls asleep. As Joel watches the movie, he receives a phone call from Tommy, who is in jail for assault and needs to be bailed out. He explains that he got into a fight defending a waitress at a bar, knocking a man out who was crazy. Joel, with a heavy heart, agrees to bail him out so he won't have to spend the weekend in jail. He carries a sleeping Sarah to her room, tucks her in and leaves the house at 11:03 p.m. At 2:16 a.m., Sarah is awakened by the sound of a helicopter. She gets up to find Joel missing and turns on the TV to see the emergency alert system being broadcasted. She is startled when Mercy pounds against the window and heads outside to comfort him. As she looks up, she sees a military helicopter in the sky. She tries to bring Mercy back to the Adlers, but he breaks his collar and runs away. Sarah walks into the Adlers to find Danny sitting against the kitchen wall, fatally injured and in shock. She sees an infected Nana biting a lifeless Connie's neck. Nana, with her tendrils fully exposed, notices Sarah and stares at her for a few seconds before chasing her outside. Just then, Joel and Tommy arrive, and Joel urges Sarah to get in the truck. Nana runs out of the house and trips on the doorstep, and they watch in awe as she crawls, then runs, toward Joel, who strikes her in the head with a pipe wrench. While Joel consoles a frantic Sarah, a transformer explodes in the distance, and Tommy urges them to get in the car. As they drive out of the neighborhood, Tommy runs over an infected Connie and sideswipes an infected Danny. Denise, another neighbor, runs outside, shocked that Joel would run over Connie, only for Danny to attack her. While driving to an alternate highway, they pass multiple police officers, and Joel and Tommy attempt to calm a curious, yet stressed Sarah. They discuss rumors of it being a virus or parasite, the lack of communication systems, the possibility of a terrorist attack, and the chance that one of them may be sick. They see their friend Jimmy's farm engulfed in flames and pass a stranded family on the side of the road. Joel convinces Tommy not to stop. They try to merge onto the highway, avoiding contraflow traffic, only to see that it is full of people trying to escape. They attempt to cut through a field to the west, only to see the army has set up a huge blockade. Out of options, they head due north to cut through a town, find a river, and pick up the highway on the other side of the blockade. Tommy continues to race toward town and is suddenly astonished to see 3 passenger jets flying very low over them. His path is blocked by law enforcement vehicles, so Tommy detours through the heart of the town, which is saturated with panicked civilians and infected. Tommy feels uneasy about following Joel's suggestion to drive through civilians. As a large crowd runs out of a theater in front of them, the situation becomes more chaotic, and Joel urges Tommy to reverse through the street. Suddenly, one of the passenger planes starts to fall from the sky behind them. Tommy quickly switches gears and drives forward. The plane crashes in the distance, sending debris flying into their truck. The truck is totaled, and Sarah sees an infected feeding nearby. Joel grabs Sarah, whose ankle is injured, and exits the truck, with Tommy exiting on the other side. A law enforcement vehicle collides with Tommy's truck, barricading Joel and Sarah in an alley and separating them from Tommy. They plan to regroup at the river. Since Sarah cannot run, Joel carries her through the burning town, stumbling upon a group of infected. One of them notices Joel and chases him into a diner. The runner thrashes through the kitchen, almost catching up to Joel in the field outside the diner, but it is unexpectedly shot in the head. Joel turns around to see a soldier aiming his gun at him. The soldier radios his superior for instructions, notifying them of Sarah's ankle injury. He is told to kill Joel and Sarah. Joel tries to convince the soldier that neither of them are sick, but the soldier opens fire and they fall down a hill. Joel, only grazed by a bullet, is almost shot by the apologetic soldier, but Tommy kills the soldier and saves Joel. They then shift their attention toward Sarah, who was fatally shot in the abdomen and is hyperventilating. Joel attempts to move her, to no avail. He then tries to apply pressure to the wound and calms Sarah, who is in severe pain. He screams for Tommy to help, but Tommy knows it is too late. Sarah dies in Joel's arms. 20 years later, a dazed young boy stumbles through a forest, coming across a desolate and ravaged Boston, Massachusetts. The child almost makes it to a processing center for the quarantine zone before collapsing and being brought in by a few soldiers. He is rolled into a room where infographics regarding the cordyceps infection are posted on the wall. A sympathetic soldier asks the boy a few basic questions, including where he got his injury, to which the boy is non-responsive. Another soldier scans the boy with an unknown device, which then displays the color red. The soldier asks the boy if he would like some medicine and for them to make his favorite food, to which he nods yes. As the other soldier injects the boy with a drug, she promises him new clothes, toys, and safety. Afterward, Joel Miller, among other quarantine zone residents, are burning previously infected, deceased bodies. A truck arrives with more bodies to burn, and Joel and a woman move to unload it. Finding a child's body in the truck, the woman stops and tells Joel that she cannot bring herself to throw a child into the fire. Joel stoically does it himself, and the child is revealed to be the boy from earlier. Later, Joel is finishing his manual labor and collects payment from a foreman named Knapp. Joel asks if there are any other possible jobs for the day, and Knapp offers one of 2 jobs, street sweeping or sewer maintenance. Joel chooses sewer maintenance since it pays more. The Boston quarantine zone is shown to be a functioning society, dictatorially run by the United States military, controlled by Fedra. The soldiers impose a strict curfew, and the rooftops are constantly manned with snipers. Workers paint over graffiti resembling a firefly. Joel walks into an audience witnessing a public execution, but discreetly retreats with a soldier on the side. The soldier, Lee, gives Joel a considerable sum of ration cards. Joel counts it and claims Lee is short $5. Lacking the money, Lee gives him a pack of cigarettes. In exchange, Joel gives Lee hydrocodone. Joel asks about the status of a vehicle he wants, and Lee says he has convinced everyone necessary for the acquisition. Lee asks for $600 for himself and the 4 accomplices, but lets Joel know the vehicle is in bad condition. Joel leverages this and negotiates the price down. Lee warns Joel to stay off the streets due to violence from both an opposition group called the Fireflies and sleep-deprived Fedra soldiers. Elsewhere in Boston, Tess is held in a basement by Robert and his men. Robert apologizes to Tess for ripping her off, having sold a car battery owed to Tess to someone else. Tess, sporting a swollen eye and bloody lip, says they can forget it ever happened, but Robert is still hesitant to release her. He fears reprisal from Joel when he sees Tess's injuries and learns about the car battery. Tess insists that Joel answers to her, and if she tells him to leave Robert alone he will. Robert is about to agree to release Tess when an explosion tears open the basement wall, killing one of Robert's men and allowing Tess to escape. She emerges onto the street amid blaring alarms and sees the streets quickly flooded with Fedra soldiers. A firefight breaks out between Fedra and a rooftop shooter. Out of options, Tess surrenders to Fedra and is detained, shouting that she is not a firefly. Meanwhile, a young girl is chained to the wall of a room. A medic walks in, attempting to give the girl a tray of food, which she kicks away. A woman asks the girl to perform a series of specific actions, to which the girl, calling herself Veronica, impudently complies. Veronica warns them that Fedra will come looking for her, and she pleads to be let out. The Firefly slogan is painted onto the wall, indicating the Fireflies have kidnapped Veronica. Joel visits Abe, who is working as a radio caller. Joel gives him the cigarettes, and Abe says that he hasn't heard anything back from Tommy, even with Gabriella or his elder son listening at night. Joel sent Tommy a message 3 weeks prior and is insistent that it never took Tommy more than a day to respond previously. Joel presses for the location of Tommy's tower, and the man says it is in Wyoming. The man admits Joel is capable of handling himself, but he warns that a trip from Boston to Wyoming will likely be obstructed by the infected, raiders, slavers and worse things he hears on the radio daily. The man begins marking the location on Joel's map when Joel abruptly walks out, clearly annoyed. Joel enters his apartment, shifts a dresser, and uncovers a hidden stash by removing some wooden floor tiles. He takes out a map and closely studies it while indulging in alcohol and drugs. It is revealed that he still wears the watch that Sarah had fixed for him. He dozes off but is abruptly awakened by a nightmare. Tess enters the room and joins him in bed. In the morning, Joel is shocked to see Tess's injuries. Tess lies, claiming that she was simply jumped by a few 19-year-olds she provoked. Joel notices that the injuries are old, to which she admits she was being held captive by Fedra for a day. Tess then comes clean and admits she was injured by Robert's men. She says that Robert sold their car battery to someone else. She tries to calm him, claiming they can either get the battery or the money back. Joel seeks the battery since he is worried about Tommy and wishes to leave as soon as possible. Tess agrees to get the battery and the money, but she asks Joel to calm down before making a move so as to ensure a stealthy operation. After hashing out a plan, Joel pulls a gun out of the stash. A woman walks into a Firefly meeting where she is quickly pressed on the reason behind attacking Fedra. The woman tells them to just follow orders. Her name is revealed to be Marlene, and she reiterates to the questioner, Kim Tembo, that the Firefly's goal is to restore democracy and freedom by waging war against Fedra. She says the Fireflies have been fighting for 20 years and have gained no ground. She reveals a new plan to distract Fedra while the Fireflies rendezvous at a specific building and leave Boston permanently. Kim asks why they are quitting, to which Marlene says the new plan is to smuggle Veronica somewhere out west. Marlene shows Kim a note containing a shocking message, and they come to an agreement. As Joel watches Tess negotiate ration cards for intel on Robert's whereabouts, a man tells Joel that he looks a little lost, likely trying to gauge Joel's reaction to the phrase and assess if he is a member of the Fireflies or sympathetic to their cause. Joel threatens the man and leaves with Tess. Tess claims Robert is taking the battery to a red-tagged building formerly used by a man named Miguel. She suggests they go through the subway tunnel that night and enter the building from below, taking Robert by surprise. Veronica attempts to break the chains when rainwater drips from the ceiling onto her face. Marlene then enters the room, handing Veronica's backpack to her and sitting next to her. Veronica is still clearly upset, despite Marlene reminding her that she saved her life. Veronica allows Marlene to unlock her from the chains. Veronica asks if it is going to happen, to which Marlene says no. She then asks to leave, to which Marlene also says no. Marlene reveals that she knows Veronica's real name, Ellie, and that Marlene is responsible for Ellie's placement in the Fedra military school immediately after her birth. Shocked, Ellie briefly contemplates whether Marlene is her mother, and then she asks why a terrorist like Marlene would place her in Fedra care. Marlene responds that she felt Ellie would be safest there. Insulted by the terrorist remark, Marlene references Riley's involvement with the Fireflies. The tone becomes grim as Marlene tells Ellie of the plan to leave Boston. Ellie questions Marlene about why she is being smuggled, to which Marlene reveals that Ellie serves a greater purpose, telling her a secret that she says can never be revealed. Joel and Tess enter the Haymarket North extension and begin to traverse the tunnel. Tess is extremely frightened by a deceased infected whose fungus has grown into the walls. Joel suggests that whatever infected him may still be in the tunnel. Tess navigates them through the route until they reach a barricaded door leading to the desired building. Joel smells gunpowder and blood pours off the sill of the door. Upon opening the door, they find a group of recently killed Fireflies, as well as the battery, which Tess deems non-functional. Turning a corner, Joel raises his gun and sneaks up to Marlene and Kim, both of whom are badly injured. All of a sudden, Ellie jumps out of her room, attempting to stab Joel. Marlene and Kim turn around, surprised to see him, and hold him at gunpoint. When Ellie tries to grab her knife from underneath Joel's foot, he holds her at gunpoint, prompting Marlene and Kim to hold Joel at gunpoint. As the women lower their weapons, Joel shifts to holding them at gunpoint. Marlene claims she needed the car battery to relocate Ellie, but she claims neither herself nor Kim are in any position to do so anymore. She proposes that Joel smuggle her, to which Kim, Ellie, and Joel immediately object. Marlene offers Joel and Tess a fully fueled truck, guns, and supplies if they smuggle Ellie to the State House. Upon briefly talking it over, Tess agrees to the plan. Ellie does not, but Marlene forces her to go. Joel, Tess, and Ellie walk briskly through the rainy streets. The three reach Joel's apartment. Ellie eavesdrops on Joel and Tess as they discuss a contingency plan to head to Bill and Frank's town, as well as a plan for Tess to scout the area ahead while Joel rests. Using this information, Ellie cracks a portion of a smuggling code given to Joel by Bill and Frank, hidden in Joel's book. She deduces that 60s music implies no new information and 70s music implies a new message. When Joel enters, she asks who Bill and Frank are and what 80s music implies. Joel, annoyed, ignores her questions and takes a nap on the couch. Ellie notes Joel's broken watch. Joel wakes after nightfall. Ellie seeks confirmation in Joel's ability to handle the operation, and Joel questions Ellie's importance. Ellie claims that "Wake Me Up Before You Go" by Wham! Had played on the radio while he slept, to which Joel begins to worry. Ellie then reveals she lied to gauge his reaction to an 80s song playing on the radio and finishes cracking the smuggling code. 80s implies Bill and Frank are in trouble. Before Joel can reprimand her, Tess enters and says it is time to leave. Fedra patrols the streets, enforcing a curfew. Joel, Tess, and Ellie emerge from underground and Ellie stands up in excitement. They then hide behind concrete to avoid being spotted by the patrols. The group discreetly makes their way through the apocalyptic rubble until they come across a urinating soldier. The soldier is startled when the group tries to sneak past him, and it is revealed that the soldier is Lee, the man that Joel had bribed with drugs. Despite Joel's friendly advances, Lee asserts his authority over them. Tess attempts to negotiate, but without success. Lee makes them kneel with their hands on their head and begins to scan them. As he scans Ellie, she stabs him in the leg with her knife, Quickly recovering, he holds Ellie at gunpoint, but Joel blocks him. The situation triggers Joel's PTSD as it parallels the death of Sarah. As Lee advances, Joel lunges at him and pummels his face into the ground in a furious rage as Ellie watches, mesmerized. Tess then picks up the scanner which indicates that Ellie is infected. Ellie denies this, and as Tess pleads with Joel, Ellie shows her the bite on her arm, saying she got it 3 weeks prior. Realizing the greater threat, the three of them decide to seek safety. Joel grabs Lee's assault rifle, and they set off to navigate the unsettled ruins of a tempestuous Boston. Meanwhile, in Joel's apartment, the radio begins playing Never Let Me Down Again by Depeche Mode. Released in 1987, this implies that Bill and Frank are in trouble.
On the 24th of September, 2003 in Jakarta, Indonesia, mycologist Ratna Pertiva has lunch at a local cafe. The authorities abruptly accompany her to a private laboratory, implying that they need her academic knowledge in the field of mycology and offer her to look at the prepared sample. She concludes that it is the fairy cordyceps, and the man informs her that it is a sample from a human. She is skeptical, so she is allowed to carefully examine the infected woman. Ratno is horrified when he removes the mustache from the woman's mouth. The authorities inform her that the incident began at a flour mill where 14 workers disappeared, and ask her to suggest how to avoid the spread of infection. In shock, she offers to bomb the whole city, killing all the inhabitants. Then she becomes very emotional and asks for permission to be with her family. In 2023, Ellie sleeps on the ground in an abandoned building. Joel and Tess are watching her when she wakes up, and both have her at gunpoint. All three discuss her bite or claim that she is not infected, but Joel and Tess are doubtful. Ellie starts eating the chicken sandwich that Marlene packed for her when the Tess demands to talk about her importance, otherwise they will leave without her, to which Ellie admits that there is a firefly camp in the West where a vaccine is being developed. Joel, still doubtful, offers to pick her up again, but Tess has a hard time convincing him to follow the current plan, because although she still doubts Ellie's immunity, she claims that the fireflies will still give them supplies. They hit the road, and Ellie is fascinated by the ruins. Their way to the Massachusetts State House is blocked by a collapsing building. Joel gives an ultimatum: a long way or a short one. Tess and Ellie want to go the long way, and Joel decides to check out the hotel first. On the way, Ellie tells Tess that she was bitten when she sneaked into an abandoned shopping mall alone. She says that she is a 14-year-old orphan who does not have a loved one. She admits that she used to think that the outside world was saturated with hordes of infected, and asks about the fact that infected people can use echolocation when an ominous scream distracts the group. Joel encourages them to keep moving. They reach the lobby of the hotel, which is flooded, and Ellie informs them that she can't swim. The water turns out to be shallow, and Ellie is messing around in the flooded lobby. She accidentally discovers a skeleton, which stops her recklessness, and the group continues to climb the stairs. The corridor is blocked, so the Tess crawls through a narrow hole in the blockage to open the next door from the inside. Joel tries to make small talk with Ellie while they wait for Tess, but he begins to get annoyed by her arrogance and personal questions. They discuss the infected, and the Tess interrupts possible conversations about the man Joel beat to death the night before. Joel notices the worried expression on Tess' face. On the balcony, the TPP shows them a large group of infected people lying on the ground together on their way to the state building. Tess explains to Ellie that most of them were deep inside the buildings at some point, and when people trying to get to the quarantine zone entered the building in search of shelter, they were often bitten. The test also explains that the fungus grows underground, and its fibers reach a length of several miles. Thus, by disturbing one focus of cordyceps, you can awaken another, located a few miles away from it. She informs Ellie that although she is immune from infection, she is not immune from being torn apart by the horde. They decide that they should take a shortcut to the museum. Joel cracks a mushroom growing outside the museum and concludes that its dryness indicates that all infected in the museum are dead. They slowly enter the museum. Joel admits that they should have chosen this path in the first place. Ellie is confronted by a man who appears to have been violently assaulted. The test tries to convince itself and Joel that the man was attacked outside, because an attack of this type indoors implies something more sinister. Joel demands complete silence for the rest of their stay at the museum. They climb the stairs quietly. Ellie steps on the decomposed hand, creating a noise. They go to a room on the top floor, and the stairs collapse as soon as they pass through it. They keep quiet when they hear an ominous clicking sound. Clicking comes out of the next room, and Ellie gets scarier and scarier. They hide behind the window. Joel tells Ellie they can't see, but they can hear. Clicker stumbles next to them, and Ellie lets out a sigh, alerting him. This prompts Joel to shoot the clicker with a machine gun, but it does nothing. While he is fighting off the clicker, another one appears. Tess and Eli run away, but stumble over a dummy. The second clicker chases Tess, and either crawls away. Joel runs away from the first clicker, smashes the showcase, which attracts the attention of the clicker, who is hiding behind the wall. He surreptitiously reloads the gun and makes his way to Kelly. They crouch, walking away from the clicker. However, Joel steps on the glass, and the clicker jumps over the table onto Ellie and Joel. He escapes and kills both clickers with his assault rifle. The Tess tells them to move before the sun sets. Outside, Joel puts a bandage on Ellie's bite and helps Tess set her sprained ankle. He again expresses concern about Ellie's infection, but Tess snaps back, saying that they should be grateful for being alive. They reach the road in front of the state building, where a truck with containers is parked, waiting for Ellie to be transported. Joel begins to suspect that no one is meeting them, and checks the truck, finding a dead driver under it. Tess pulls out a gun and runs inside with Ellie. They find the fireflies dead. Joel turns one of them over and discovers that mushrooms are growing on his face. Ellie asks him if Phaedra did it, and Joel replies that no, one of the fireflies got infected, passed the infection on to others, and the survivors either died or committed suicide instead of getting infected themselves. Horrified, Tess begins examining the bodies, claiming that one of them must have a map or something pointing the way to the firefly camp. Joel finally loses his patience and tells them that it's over and they need to go home. Tess notices that this is now her home, to which Eli realizes that she is infected. Joel asks her to show him, and Tess pulls back his shirt to reveal a heavily infected bite mark on his neck. She reflects that at some point their luck should have run out. While Joel is trying to make sense of what is happening, Tess orders Ellie to remove the bandage and discovers that the bite mark has completely healed. Tess orders Joel to find Bill and Frank and force them to transfer ore, telling him that he is obligated to save everyone he can. Suddenly one of the dead fireflies wakes up, and Joel, without hesitation, shoots him. Threads wrap around his arms, and the infected horde rushes to the state building. Tess grabs the discarded weapons and starts smashing fuel barrels and throwing grenades, telling Ellie that she will make sure that the infected can't chase them. Joel grabs Ellie by the hand and forcibly pulls her out of the state building while the horde storms the building. The Tess tries to light the lighter, but the flame goes out all the time. The infected man pushes her into a corner and lets the tendrils from his mouth into her mouth, sealing them with a kiss. Tess feels her mind slowly overcome by a cordyceps infection, but she keeps trying to light the lighter until it finally catches fire. Having abandoned her, she uses the last moment of free will and closes her eyes when the building bursts into a sea of flames. Joel and Ellie are outside when the building explodes. They see the infected stumble out, burning to the ground, and Joel holds a rifle aimed at them. In the end, he lowers his rifle and walks away without saying a word, and Ilya stays behind, looking after him. 10 miles west of Boston on the morning after Tessa's death, Joel wordlessly gathers Karen on the riverbank and then returns to meet Ellie at a nearby campsite. Joel ignores Ellie's attempts to strike up a conversation, as a result of which she brings up the topic of Tessa's death. He tells Ellie he doesn't want any apologies, which she scoffs at. She points out that Tess and Joel made the decision to accompany her for their own selfish reasons, so he shouldn't even blame her for what happened. Joel doesn't say anything, and they continue their 5-hour hike to Bill and Frank's house. The hike is relatively quiet, although Joel does not lose vigilance so as not to miss the raiders. Alice asks again if she can take a gun, to which he immediately refuses. They arrive at the abandoned Cumberland Farms gas station, where Joel kept one of his hiding places many years ago. Ellie happily fiddles with a broken Mortal Kombat 2 slot machine, claiming that a friend taught her this game. While Joel is looking for his hiding place or looking for items missed by the scavengers, She finds the door to the basement in the back room, goes downstairs and finds that the shelves are empty, except for a box of tampons, which we eagerly have enough. Her excitement is interrupted by the cry of the infected, but he turns out to be harmless, as he is trapped, still alive under a pile of debris. Ellie approaches him with a knife and makes an incision along his forehead, exposing the growth of cordyceps under the skin. With sudden aggressiveness, she plunges a knife into the infected person's head, killing him. She returns to Joel, who has found his hiding place without telling him what happened. To her disappointment, Joel decides to leave the rifle he stole from Lee, as he is unlikely to find ammunition for it in the wild. He again refuses to let or take it. The couple continues their walk. Ellie notices the wreckage of a crashed plane from the day of the outbreak on a nearby hill. She admires him and the prospect of Joel traveling in the sky. Joel cuts her off in delight, noting that flying has never been very pleasant and those who were on board the plane at the time will agree with this. She asks about the events of the day of the outbreak, which she never found out about at Phaedra's school. Joel explains that when cordyceps was confused to infect a person, it got into food products, presumably flour or sugar. And then into some widely distributed products that appeared on the shelves on Thursday, September 25, 2003. As the population ate them over the next Friday, they began to get sick, and eventually, under the influence of violence, attacked others to spread the fungus. And by Monday, everything was gone. Joel stops Ellie, suggesting that they go the other way, because something on the path is alarming them. Ellie waves him off, but immediately sees what he meant: a mass grave full of skeletal remains. Joel explains that within a week of the outbreak, the government evacuated small towns, promising to take them to quarantine zones. However, if the quarantine zones were filled with random residents, most of whom were most likely not infected, soldiers were killed. The logic, Joel explains, was that if they were killed, it meant they wouldn't be infected. Immediately after the day of the outbreak, residents of Lincoln, Massachusetts, are evacuated, including some of those who will die in a mass grave that Joel and Ellie will find in 20 years. In a basement bunker, a bearded man watches on a surveillance camera as soldiers comb through his house, pulls out a gun and mutters, "Not today. You bastards in the boots of the New World Order." In the end, the soldiers leave together with the evacuated citizens. The man gets out of the bunker and makes sure that his house and the surrounding city are clean. Satisfied, he gets into his truck and gets to work on turning the city into his personal complex, refueling with fuel, lumber, generators and other equipment from nearby areas. He installs an electrified fence and various traps around the perimeter to protect himself from both infected and other people. Having built a completely self-sufficient complex with running water, a gas stove, heating and electricity, he prepares for himself a chic dinner of steaks, supplemented with wine, and watches with glee on the surveillance camera as an infected person dies from one of his traps. 4 years later, in the 27th year, a man is engaged in welding work in his basement when he notices that one of his traps behind the fence has worked. Coming out with a gun to lay down his victim, he is surprised to hear a human voice from inside the trap informing him that he is not infected. The man in the pit, who is eventually named Frank, explains that he is unarmed and is just trying to get to Boston. He is the last survivor of a group of 10 people who managed to escape from crowded Baltimore. Frank is helped out of the pit, but his request for food is refused. The man claims that every homeless person you talk to about this will come here in search of a free lunch, and this is not Arbus. Frank, pointing out that there are no free lunches in Arbus, feels kindness in the man's heart and promises not to tell anyone about it. The man gives up and allows Frank to come into his house, allows him to take a hot shower and gives him new clothes. Frank is sitting in the dining room, secretly marveling at the surroundings, for example, the antique piano in the living room. To Frank's surprise, the owner of the house appears with a well-served rabbit dish and even serves him a glass of Bojale wine, for which Frank compliments his increasingly embarrassed host. Frank finishes his meal and politely refuses the offer of a supplement. Before leaving, he asks the owner for a piano and finds a copy of the Notes for Long Long Time by Linda Ronstadt. His performance leaves much to be desired, which encourages the man to take responsibility and demonstrate his abilities to play the piano and sing, which he performs with passion behind the text. Frank asks who is this girl. To which the man replies that there is no girl. Frank admits that he knew, and the couple shares an indecisive but passionate kiss. Finally, the man says his name is Bill, and Frank tells Bill to take a shower. Soon the couple climbs into bed, where Bill admits that he has never had an experience with another man. Frank offers to be gentle, but declares that he will not be a whore, doing cupcake in exchange for lunch, instead offering to stay for the next few days. Now, in the 2010 year, Bill and Frank are quarreling over Frank's desire to clean up the house. Frank believes that Bill is tied to his isolation from the world after September 11th and that they should clean up the city, including the shops, so that they can invite friends. Bill scoffs at the fact that they have no friends, and only after that Frank tells that he talked to a nice woman on the radio. The sweet woman turns out to be young Tess, who, along with Joel, joins Bill and Frank for a nice lunch to discuss a partnership in a smuggling operation. Frank and Tess immediately hit it off, while Bill keeps a gun on the table. Joel understands Bill's paranoia, but claims that anesthesia is probably the best option for Bill and Frank to let people into their house. They can offer books, medicines and machine parts from the language. Bill claims that he and Frank are self-sufficient and do not need Joel and Tess, not what they can offer. Joel notices that Bill's electric fence has already started to rust, and offers to buy a durable wire to protect him and Frank. The meeting ends well. Frank suggests a music-based radio code test, suggesting that 80s music may signal trouble. Joel tells Bill that Federa will not look for them, and the fence and traps are more than enough to cope with the infected, but he should remember about the raiders. Bill assures Joel that he and Frank will be fine. Fast forward to the 2013 year. The outer fence was further reinforced with more powerful traps and a wall of cars. Frank takes Bill for a run around town to show him a surprise prepared, a strawberry garden, which he planted with the help of seeds provided by Joel and Tess in exchange for one of Bill's guns. As they happily taste fresh strawberries, Bill expresses concern that he is aging faster than Frank and that he may have to leave Frank unprotected, although Frank insists that he should not worry about it. Bill remarks that he was never afraid until Frank showed up. One rainy night, a group of raiders tries to ambush the camp, but as a result, Bill's much more deadly traps are triggered. Bill goes outside in the pouring rain with a rifle to protect the camp, but gets shot. Frank drags the wounded Bill into the house while the traps finish off the raiders. While Frank dutifully treats Bill's wounds, Bill in a delirium shouts out instructions for taking care of the house and demands that Frank call Joel, claiming that Joel will be able to protect him instead of Bill. 10 years later, Bill and Frank have become slower with age, and Frank, in particular, is confined to a wheelchair due to an unspecified illness that affects his motor skills. He spends most of his days painting in an art studio, while Bill takes care of plants outdoors and helps him perform basic tasks, including eating and taking medications. In the end, Frank declares that he no longer wants to suffer from pain and is ready to die. Bill offers to find a doctor, but Frank realizes that it is useless. Even if they had medical equipment that a doctor could use, Frank's disease was untreatable even before the outbreak. He comforts Bill by suggesting what to do on his last day. They would go to the nearest boutique, choose suits and rings, get married, Bill would serve him dinner, and at the end of the evening he would take a package of crushed sleeping pills, mix it in Frank's wine and he would fall asleep in Bill's arms. Bill fulfills all of Frank's requests and even serves his longtime partner the same rabbit and wine dish that they first tasted on the day they met many years ago. When it's time to drink wine, Bill mixes crushed pills in a glass, which Frank quickly drinks. Bill then pours himself a glass, which he drinks at the same rate. Frank, surprised, realizes that Bill has already put a lethal dose of pills in a bottle of wine. Bill refuses to let their story end tragically when one of them is left alone, pointing out that he is also old and ready to leave, seeing no reason to continue living without Frank. Frank expresses his disapproval, but finds the gesture romantic, and the couple go to bed together. Weeks pass, and Lincoln is overgrown with desolation. Joel and Ellie arrive at the complex and find that the house seems empty, although Joel notices that the bedroom is locked. Ellie looks around the house, notices the rotting remains of Bill and Frank's last dinner, and finds Bill's letter left for Joel, who reads aloud. In the note, Bill explains that his and Frank's bodies are in the bedroom, which he does not advise Joel to examine, since, in his opinion, it is a very picturesque sight, although they left the window open so that the house does not stink. He explains that he used to hate the whole world and was happy when it ended, but found his purpose in one person worth saving, Frankie. He tells Joel that people like the two of them are obligated to protect the one who is worth saving, and offers Joel all his weapons and equipment so that he can ensure the safety of the thermal power plant. Without thinking twice, Joel runs out of the house and retires with tears in his eyes on the street. Joel goes to the garage, where he finds Bill's truck and everything he needs for a fresh battery. He returns to the house and asks to look at the bite mark of Ollie. After making sure it has healed, he explains that they can go to Wyoming to meet his brother Tommy, who used to be a member of the Fireflies and can help her get to the lab. Ellie, softened by the letter, tries to bring up the subject of the vehicle again, but she is stopped by Joel, who declares that he must establish some rules. From now on, they would never mention Tess again. She can't tell anyone about the bite mark, since most people won't take the time to listen to her, and she has to do whatever he tells her. Ellie agrees. They go down to the basement, where they find a wall with Bill's guns and a radio that still plays 80s music. The system was automatically set to play a playlist of troubles if it wasn't rebooted every few weeks. Alice asks Joel again if she can take one of Bill's guns, and again he refuses. They scour the house for supplies or take a hot shower and change clothes, waiting for Joel to finish taking a shower or find Frank's gun in the drawer. When she hears Joel approaching, she quickly hides him in her backpack. The couple gets into Bill's truck, which Ellie gets excited about, comparing it to finding a spaceship, despite the fact that Joel says it's a bad car. After forcing Ellie to fasten her seatbelt, they drive to the main gate of the complex. Ellie rummages in the glove compartment and finds a cassette, which she inserts into the radio. The tape turns out to be Long, Long Time. Joel allows her to leave the tape, stating that Linda Ronstadt is good music or not impressed, although she notices Joel's melancholic reaction. They drive away from the complex, and the camera lingers on the open window of Bill and Frank's bedroom. In the toilet of a gas station, Ellie plays with a gun that she stole and killed Frank, not forgetting to remove the magazine and the cartridge in the chamber, and then works out her stance in the mirror. After putting the gun in her backpack, she goes outside and discovers that Joel is pumping gasoline for a truck from an abandoned car. Due to the age of the fuel, they have to stop almost every hour, whereas previously cars drove on a full tank for 10 to 12 hours. To pass the time, she pulls out Will Livingston's book No Pan Intent and tries to read a series of bad puns to the unresponsive Joel. When they hit the road again, Ellie finds another tape on which the Hank Williams song Alone and For Falcon is recorded, which Joel likes. She also finds one of Bill's porn magazines and plays Joel, admiring the pictures and pretending she doesn't know why the pages are sticky, then throws the magazine out the window. They continue their journey, observing the ruins of civilization. When dusk falls, Joel decides to end the trip and takes them to the forest to set up camp for the night. He serves Ellie several cans of Chef Boyardee ravioli from 20 years ago, which they all agree are quite tasty. Joel plans to spend the night and then drive non-stop to Wyoming for the next 24 hours and hopes to get there by the next morning. Ellie suggests they build a fire, to which Joel strongly objects. Instead of warning the infected, he will warn other people, who, as Joel warns, will do much more than just rob them. When they get into their sleeping bags, Joel puts a rifle next to him. Ellie tries to defuse the situation before going to bed by asking why the Scarecrow got an award. Joel, slightly amused, replies, because he was outstanding in his field, after which he tells me to either go to bed. Ellie asks if anyone will find them in the wild, to which Joel says no. However, when Ellie falls asleep, Joel's paranoia takes over, and he gets out of his sleeping bag to keep watch all night with a gun. The next morning, Ellie wakes up to Joel making coffee, the smell of which she finds disgusting. As they drive, she expresses bewilderment that this is what used to be served at Starbucks, to which Joel smacks loudly in response. She asks him about Tommy. Joel explains that his last known location was somewhere near Cody, Wyoming, and if he's not there, he'll be in the nearest settlement. After some prodding from Ellie, Joel explains that Tommy always wanted to be a hero and that's why he enlisted in the army after graduation. However, after serving in Operation Desert Storm, he became disillusioned. After the outbreak, Joel followed him from Texas to the Boston area to make sure he didn't get into trouble. There they met Tess and Marlene, the latter of whom awakened Tommy's dreams of saving the world by recruiting him into Fireflies. However, according to Joel's latest information, he also quit and lives alone, which prompted Joel to go in search of him. Ellie asks why Joel is so determined to keep going if he has given up on the world. Joel replies that she hasn't seen the world, and he keeps going for the sake of the family. Ellie points out that she is not family. Joel agrees, saying, "You're a cargo," but he made a promise to the TPP. When they are in Kansas City, Missouri, an abandoned truck blocks their way. Faced with the fact that there is a free road ahead and you don't have to go back and go around the city, which will delay arrival in Wyoming, Joel decides to take a detour through the city streets and from there return to the interstate. However, they quickly get lost, navigating the streets, not noticing the recently burned piles of bodies. Soon they stumble upon the entrance to the Kansas City KZ zone, but they are alarmed by the absence of Phaedrus. Soon they are interrupted by a man on the street claiming that he is injured. However, Joel does not believe him and immediately presses the gas pedal. As it turned out, the man is a rebel, and they quickly get ambushed and crash into an abandoned laundry by car. Joel tells Orr to hide in a hole in the wall, and then with his rifle kills 2 revolutionaries who shot at them. However, when he reloads his rifle, a third raider is ambushed and tries to strangle him to death. However, Ellie copes with him by shooting him in the back and paralyzing him. Ellie watches as the man, whose name is Brian, begins to beg for life. Joel says or go back behind the wall, which she does. She listens as Joel ignores Brian's frantic pleas for mercy and stabs him to death. Alarmed, Ellie pretends to be indifferent when she and Joel go outside. They watch as armored vehicles discover the carnage and then head to another building. In the remains of the Phaedra Detention Center, Kathleen, the leader of the revolutionaries, interrogates Dr. Edelstein about the whereabouts of Henry Burrell, whom she blames for her brother's death by turning him into Phaedra. Edelstein tells her that she has gone too far, which she denies, claiming that Phaedra forced her to do it, and demands at gunpoint to reveal where Henry is. Edelstein is silent, and they are interrupted by the arrival of a truck with the bodies of the people killed by Joel. Lieutenant Kathleen Perry explains that, in his opinion, the killers were outsiders. Kathleen comes to the conclusion that Henry must have brought them. Enraged, Kathleen returns to the detention block and kills Edelstein, after which she instructs the revolutionaries to find Henry's accomplices and kill them. The revolutionaries take to the streets in their trucks, forcing Joel and Ellie to hide in an abandoned bar. While they wait for things to settle down, Joel apologizes for putting Ellie in a situation where she had to kill or seriously injure someone, admitting that she is still a child. Although Ellie wipes away tears, she admits that it wasn't really the first time she hurt someone. Joel returns the gun to her and makes sure that she understands the basics of gun safety, which, as she explains, she studied at the Phaedra school. He then gives her some tips on how to hold the gun before entrusting it to her, telling her to hide it in her backpack. However, Ellie puts it in her coat pocket and returns to the street. Kathleen meets with Perry and reports that neither Henry nor the people who killed her people are in sight. However, Perry takes her to the attic of a neighboring house, where they find several drawings clearly made by a child. She assumes that Henry is running out of supplies, but he won't let Sam starve to death and tells Perry to guard the provisions. However, Perry points her to a more urgent matter. He takes her to the basement of another building, where they find a hole in the ground from which something is growing. Perry offers to warn the others, but Kathleen advises him to wait until they deal with Henry, and until then, he will cordon off the building. Joel and Ellie sneak into a multi-story apartment building, hoping to determine a clear route using the view from one of the upper floors. As they climb, Ellie asks how he recognized the ambush. Joel explains that he himself saw and performed this trick with Tess and Tommy. Ellie asks if Joel has killed innocent people, to which he says nothing. They manage to climb 33 floors before Joel runs out of steam, and they set up camp in one of the abandoned apartments. Ellie watches in disbelief as Joel pours broken glass between them and the door so that no one can sneak up on them. While they are lying on makeshift mats, Joel continues their previous conversation, asking what she meant by saying that the events of this day were not her first case of causing pain, to which she refuses to answer. He agrees with this and repeats that it is unfair for her to deal with what they saw at her age. In response to his frankness, or admits that she noticed that he was a little hard of hearing in his right ear, which he explains by years of shooting weapons. Before he has time to fall asleep or catches him by surprise, asking what is inherited, it's diarrhea that you have in your genes. Joel can't suppress his laughter, after which he manages to fall asleep peacefully. However, after turning over and closing his well-hearing ear in his sleep, he is awakened by the cry of Ellie calling him. Opening his eyes, he sees that she is being held at gunpoint by a man and, turning around, sees a young guy who also points a gun at him and orders them to be silent. Residents of Kansas City celebrate the overthrow of Phaedrus, take to the streets, kill and torture former soldiers and look for Phaedrus' accomplices for prosecution. Two such collaborators, Henry Burrell and his brother Sam, elude capture by the revolutionaries. Leader Kathleen Coughlin and her Lieutenant Perry interrogate several captured collaborators about Henry's whereabouts, claiming that she will give them a fair trial if they tell her. One of the collaborators eventually reveals that he is dating Aldelstein, whom Kathleen didn't even know was a collaborator. She orders her men to look for Henry, despite Perry's objections that there are more important things to do, and then orders Perry to kill the informants. Meanwhile, Henry and Sam meet Aldelstein and hide in the attic of an abandoned building, although they realize that due to lack of food and ammunition, this situation will be temporary. To help Sam pass the time, Henry gives him art supplies to decorate the room. 10 days pass, and Henry and Sam are almost out of food. In the end, Henry realizes that Edelstein has been captured and most likely killed, and decides that they will have to fight their way through on their own. However, as they leave the building, they witness a truck crashing into a nearby laundry. Henry watches as the driver Joel easily deals with the attackers. Intrigued, he tells Sam that he has a new plan. Without taking their eyes off the man and his companion, Henry and Sam follow them into an abandoned high-rise, trying not to make noise on the glass trail they left. At gunpoint, will not be both, while Henry tells a bewildered Joel that they just want to help. After a brief moment of confusion about Joel's instinctively threatening tone of voice, which Ellie insists is just his way of talking, they lower their weapons. The group shares the food that Joel and Ellie brought from Bill's house, taking their time to introduce themselves to each other before Henry explains that he can help Joel find a way out of town. In the morning, Henry tells Joel about what happened in Kansas City 10 days ago. After years of mistreatment of the residents of the KZ, the people rebelled and overthrew Phaedrus. Joel quickly realizes that Henry does not belong to either the Fedra or the revolutionaries. Henry admits that he was a collaborator, a person who exchanged information from the Fedra for the sake of better living conditions. Joel refuses to work with the rat, but Henry points out that he knows the city and, therefore, is the most reliable option for Joel to get out of here, noting that he and Sam, in turn, need Joel's experience with weapons to eliminate all the dangers in their path. Henry admits that he is not violent, has never killed anyone, and that the weapon they pointed at Joel and Ellie was actually unloaded. Noticing that Ellie and Sam are chatting over her collection of jokes, Joel agrees to work with them. Sam and Henry find out that the highway is completely controlled by Kathleen, but they can elude the revolutionaries by taking advantage of the tunnels that run under the city, getting out in a residential area and using a pedestrian bridge to get to safety. He admits that there is a potential danger in the tunnels. Phaedrus forces drove the infected underground 15 years ago, and although one soldier told Henry that they eventually cleared the tunnels, there is a small risk that some of them are still underground. At least they won't run into Kathleen's people, because they all think the tunnels are too dangerous. Joel and Ellie are doubtful, but when Henry hears that they survived the encounter with the clicker, he insists that they are the right people for this task. Besides, they don't have any other options. The group makes their way into the maintenance tunnel, where they find no signs of infected. However, they stumble upon an unusual sight, the children's room of the old survivors' bunker, filled with books and toys. They see no trace of the inhabitants, although Joel finds a child's drawing of two defenders named Danny and Iz, which leads them to assume that they were expelled by the infected many years ago. Ellie and Sam find an issue of Satch Starlight Comics, of which they are both fans, and Sam teaches Ellie to pronounce the catchphrase to stand up and survive in American Sign Language. Seeing how the children are having fun, Henry suggests that they wait in the nursery, since it will be safer to leave the tunnels after dark. While they are watching Ellie and Sam play, Joel apologizes for being rude to Henry, admits that he understands Henry's desire to protect Sam by any means, but he notes that he considers it cruel of Kathleen to send an army after them for this. Henry says that he was not entirely truthful. He used to be under the wing of Kathleen's brother, Michael, who founded the resistance movement and, by all accounts, was a great and compassionate leader. However, when Sam fell ill with leukemia, the only medicine that could cure her turned out to be in the hands of Phaedrus, and Henry had to give Phaedra something big to get this medicine. Michael. He admits that although it saved his brother, the guilt of his decision continues to haunt him. Then he notes that he sees in Joel that he was once a father and therefore understands Henry's arguments. Joel doesn't say anything, stating that it's time for them to continue. Kathleen is standing in her and Michael's nursery. Harry arrives with no news on the whereabouts of Henry or the man who killed Brian, and asks Kathleen how she's doing. Kathleen reflects on how Mike taught her not to be afraid, and tells her that the day before he died, he asked her to forgive Henry for betraying him. However, she feels that she cannot forgive, and expresses doubts that she should lead revolutionaries at all. Harry reminds her that she led them when she overthrew Phaedra, not Michael, and that he and the others will cover for her. Joel, Ellie, Henry and Sam exit the tunnels at night as planned, with Henry bragging that he was right when he said the tunnels are clean. When they make their way through a seemingly empty residential area, Orr invites two brothers to join them and go to Wyoming. Their conversation is interrupted by the shots of a sniper who shoots at them from a neighboring house. Joel goes alone to deal with the sniper himself. He manages to get into the house, but he discovers that the sniper is an old man. He begs the man standing at gunpoint to lower his rifle and let them pass, but he still aims at him and gets shot. To Joel's horror, this man, Anthony, turned out to be one of Kathleen's soldiers and radioed them about the group's location. A convoy of armored vehicles arrives, forcing Ellie, Sam and Henry to flee. Joel kills the driver of the lead truck with a sniper rifle and directs him to a neighboring house, which bursts into flames. While the group is hiding, Kathleen appears with her men and tells Henry to surrender. Henry offers to do this in exchange for Sam and Ellie being able to escape, but Kathleen refuses, since Ellie was involved in Brian's death, and Sam, his brother, heartlessly tells him that children are constantly dying. After telling Ellie and Sam to run away, Henry comes out of hiding and prepares to die at Kathleen's hands. However, before she can do this, they are interrupted by a loud crash. Turning to look at the burning house, they see the truck falling into the crater formed under it. A whole horde of infected people emerges from the hole, the very ones that Phaedra was holding back. Kathleen's forces are overwhelmed almost immediately, and all chances to contain the swarm cease when a bloat appears from the hole and begins to kill revolutionaries. Harry tells Kathleen to run before trying to fight the bloodsucker himself. His bullets turn out to be completely useless against a huge infected, who grabs Perry and kills him by tearing off his head. Ellie, Sam and Henry, using a distraction maneuver, try to escape, while Ellie has to dodge the clicker child, who climbs into the car, where she tries to hide. Joel helps them with a sniper rifle and, together with Ellie, destroys several infected who attacked Sam and Henry when they were hiding under a car. The three had almost reached the exit when Kathleen stopped them at gunpoint. However, before she can shoot, she is ambushed, where she is beaten to death by a child clicker. Joel takes them to a safe place, while the infected begin to make their way back to the city. The group wakes up in a safe motel room. Joel and Henry watch as Ellie and Sam continue to read their comics and joke about the absurdity of the motto to endure and survive. Joel repeats the previous offer or join them and go to Wyoming, and Henry agrees, noting that it will be useful for Sam. He tells Sam to go to bed, but or will be his to read comics again. Sam stops her and writes on his magic piece of paper, asking if Ellie is afraid, claiming that she seems fearless to him. Ellie explains that she is afraid of scorpions all the time, and then he admits that he is afraid to be left alone. Sam asks if people stay alive inside when they are infected, after which he lifts his pant leg and shows that he was bitten. Ellie shows him her own bite and claims that her blood is medicine, makes a cut on her hand and smears some of her blood on his wound, claiming that it will cure him, and agrees to stay awake with him that night. Waking up in the morning, Ellie sees that Sam is sitting. However, when she approaches him, she discovers that he has become infected overnight. Joel and Henry wake up and see Sam attacking Ellie. Henry, seeing Joel reaching for his gun, grabs it and tells him to stay away, but then shoots Sam's guns, killing him and saving Ellie. Realizing that he killed his brother, Henry turns the gun on himself, and Joel and Ellie look at what is happening in horror. When Joel buries the bodies of Sam and Henry near the motel, Alice regretfully gives Joel his things, leaves Sam's magic slate on the grave and goes towards Wyoming. Joel looks at the slate and sees that Ellie has left the words "forgive me" on it. He then picks up his things and follows her, leaving Kansas City behind. 3 months after the deaths of Henry and Sam, an elderly Native American Marlin returns to his Wyoming cabin and discovers that his wife Florence is being held at gunpoint by Joel. The couple blithely shrugs off Joel's threats, which become even more absurd due to the fact that Florence offered them sat-down soup in Marlin's absence. Having determined where they are in Wyoming, Joel asks for directions to the west, explaining that they have been wandering around Wyoming for several months after they could not find Tommy in the code, which is overflowing with infected. Marlin and Florence dissuade him, since going west means crossing a part of the river in Law's Ton, which they call the River of Death, where they often find the bodies of people and infected people who were killed by being on the other side. Joel is more concerned than Ellie about what the couple said, and he has a brief panic attack on the way home from the station, although he manages to cope with it. The couple continues on their way and sets up camp in a cave next to the river. While Joel is forging his shoe or watching the northern lights in the sky from a nearby cliff, which prompts Joel to ask her to come down. As they sit around the campfire, Ellie asks Joel what he will do if the medicine from her blood works and the world returns to normal. Joel replies that he would find an old farm and raise sheep, joking that at least the sheep do what they are told. Ellie says that she always wanted to become an astronaut, having read about space flights in the library. Joel correctly guesses that her favorite astronaut is Sally Wright. The mood turns gloomy when Ellie asks if the vaccine will really work, confessing what happened to Sam. Joel assures her that the cure is probably more complicated and that Marlin knows what she's doing. Joel then tells Ellie to go to bed while he stays on duty all night. When Joel wakes up in the morning, he discovers that Ellie is on watch, having relieved him when she woke up and found that he was asleep. Joel scolds her for not waking him up, but Ellie replies that she did everything necessary to keep watch, after which she returns the gun to him. They continue their journey through the snow, crossing the bridge over the River of Death. At first, their journey continues without stopping, as they do not encounter any dangers. As they walk along the riverbank, Ellie tries to learn how to whistle like Joel, but to no avail, and asks him to teach her how to hunt someday. They stumble upon a hydroelectric dam, which, as Joel explains, serves to generate electricity. However, as they continue on their way, Ellie asks if the River of Death refers to the place located next to the dam. They are soon interrupted by a group of armed survivors on horseback, who demand that they drop their weapons. While their leader is watching what is happening, one of the men asks if they were near the infected, and then sends a dog to check them for signs of infection. The dog ignores Joel, but is then sent to check on Ellie. Joel is terrified at the prospect of Ellie getting shot, but fortunately the dog seems more interested in playing with her. After making sure they are not infected, Joel explains that he is looking for his brother. Upon hearing this, the leader of the group suddenly steps forward and asks for his name. Joel and Ellie travel to the gated community of Jackson, where they are surprised to find a thriving town full of families preparing to celebrate Christmas. Soon Joel notices Tommy working at an outdoor construction site, and the brothers are emotionally reunited. Tommy and group leader Maria take Joel and Ellie to the cafeteria to eat. It's the first real meal they've had in months. Joel urges her to be polite to the hosts, which she tries to do, but does not have time to yell at the shy girl who looks at her from the other end of the room. Tommy and Maria apologize for starting the conversation on the wrong foot, explaining that they need to take extra precautions to protect Jackson from any dangers, and it is said that the bodies that Marlon and Florence found were an example of such dangers. Joel suggests they talk privately between the families, but Tommy informs them that Maria is actually his wife. Ellie forces Joel to awkwardly congratulate them. Tommy and Maria give them a tour of the city, explaining that Jackson is an abandoned gated community that Maria and her team found 7 years ago and turned into a commune. They keep most of the dangers at a distance, not advertising their location and not using the radio, so Tommy stopped contacting Joel. The city receives energy from the dam that Joel and Ellie saw, and has a population of 300 people, headed by a council that Maria is a member of. They even have a farm full of animals, including a stable with a foal named Shimmer, with whom Ely quickly became friends. Tommy takes Joel aside and they have a drink in one of the city bars. Tommy asks how Tess is doing, to which Joel replies that she's fine, and he drives Ellie across the country to find her family among the Fireflies. Tommy explains that the Fireflies have a base at the University of Eastern Colorado, which is about a week away by horse, but he will most likely encounter raiders and infected. Joel tries to persuade Tommy to join them, but Tommy refuses, saying that Maria is pregnant and he decided to change his path. Joel lashes out at him, doubting whether Tommy will be a good father. Tommy angrily tells Joel that just because life has stopped for him, it doesn't mean it has stopped for Tommy. Joel breaks out, stating that they will leave him in the morning. When Joel goes to the town square, he experiences another panic attack, but it passes when he notices a woman singing Christmas carols in the crowd, who reminds him of Sarah. He briefly watches her play with her daughter. After taking a shower and getting new clothes and a menstrual cup that Maria left for her, or goes to Maria and Tommy's house. Above the fireplace, she finds a plaque dedicated to the memory of 2 children, Kevin and Sarah. Maria arrives with a new winter coat for Ellie and insists on a haircut. While cutting Ellie's hair, Maria makes small talk, explaining that she used to be an assistant district attorney, and asks if she noticed Tommy's monument over the fireplace. Ellie expresses her condolences about Maria's children, but Maria reveals that she had only one child, Kevin. Sarah was Joel's daughter. Maria quickly realizes that Ellie didn't know Joel had a daughter and apologizes, but either admits that it explains some things about him. Maria warns Ellie that she doesn't know Joel, and advises her to be careful who she trusts, because the only people who can betray her are those she trusts. While Ellie is attending a city movie night, Tommy sneaks outside and finds Joel trying to fix his shoe in a boot shop. Tommy apologizes for being rude and tells Joel that going to university is not something he can't handle. Joel admits that Ellie is immune, and tells Tommy about their journey, recalling Tessa's death and the events in Kansas City. He expresses horror about Ellie's safety, claiming that he is too weak to protect her now, and says that he has a dream that she will be killed because of him. He declares that he must leave her, and asks Tommy to take her to the Fireflies instead of him. Tommy reluctantly agrees. Joel returns to the house that Maria and Tommy have allocated for him, and finds Ellie reading the diary of the previous residents, in which she expresses disgust at the frivolous desires of teenage girls of that time. Joel guesses that she overheard him and Tommy talking. Ellie angrily challenges him, accusing him of being overprotective, and says that she is not Sarah. Joel tells her that she doesn't understand the loss, to which Ellie angrily declares that everyone she has ever cared about has either died or left, all except Joel, and that she will be worse off without him. Joel calmly repeats that she is not his daughter, and he is not her father, and declares that in the morning they will go their separate ways. Leaving Ellie in her room, he tearfully thinks about Sarah and his memories of her upbringing. Tommy arrives in the morning and takes Ellie to the stable, where they are surprised to find that Joel is trying to steal one of the horses. Joel admits that Ellie deserves the right to choose who she goes with, but as soon as he has time to say a word, Ellie decides to go with him. As they prepare to leave, Joel says goodbye to Tommy, who reminds them that there is always a place for them in Jackson. While Joel and Ellie get to Colorado, they continue to get closer. Joel teaches Ellie how to shoot a rifle with a telescopic sight, tells her about his life as a contractor before the outbreak of the epidemic and explains the rules of the game of football. When they enter the campus, Joel admits that he would like to change his previous answer. As a child, he wanted to become a singer. Ellie finds this funny and tells him that later he will have to sing for her in exchange for her saving the world. They find escaped monkeys and traces of fireflies on campus, but there are no real fireflies. They find out that the fireflies suddenly packed up and moved to Salt Lake City. They are interrupted by the arrival of the raiders, and they try to escape. Trying to get on a horse, Joel is ambushed by one of the raiders, whom he kills, but realizes that he stabbed him with a knife. They manage to escape on horseback, but when they reach the railway track, Joel falls and loses consciousness, and a panicked Ellie frantically tries to revive him. In the basement of a ruined house in rural Colorado, Ellie is desperately trying to stop Joel's bleeding. Joel, delirious, tells her to leave him and return to Jackson. Ellie throws a jacket over him to keep him warm, and then goes to the top of the stairs to think about her actions. A few months before, Ellie listens to Pearl Jam's Toll Ornan on her Walkman while running in circles at the Phaedra School in the quarantine zone of Boston. Another student, Bethany, steals her headphones and taunts her about Ellie's friend leaving. As a result of the fight, Bethany ends up in the infirmary with 15 stitches, and Ellie is in Captain Kwong's office with a black eye. Instead of throwing her into the hole alone, Kwong firmly tells Ellie that she is smart and strong enough to be a leader, but her relationship is becoming a problem. He offers her two options. If she continues to behave as usual, she will most likely become a nameless soldier under Bethany's guidance and will probably die a senseless death. Or she will swallow her pride and become an officer and enjoy the benefits of this position, and also become Bethany's boss. He tells Ellie that Phaedra, the only thing that prevents people in the quarantine zone from plunging into horror, and Ellie can become part of maintaining peace. Ellie decides to try to follow the rules. The next night in his dorm or reading a comic book by Satch Starlight, looking at the empty bed at the other end of the room before falling asleep. At night, a man climbs into Ellie's room through the window and tries to sneak up on Ellie, who immediately wakes up and throws the uninvited guest on the floor, after which she grabs her knife. She is surprised to discover that the attacker is her former roommate and best friend Riley, who ran away from Phaedra's school 3 weeks ago. To Ellie's disappointment, Riley reveals that she has joined the Fireflies and asks Ellie to go with her for the night. Ellie reluctantly agrees and follows Riley out of the dorm. They make their way through the streets, avoiding patrols, and enter an abandoned building. Going upstairs, they stumble upon the corpse of a civilian who seems to have recently committed suicide, having consumed alcohol and some medicine at the same time. They steal alcohol from him, which they believe was made before the day of the outbreak, and drink a little while they get to the roof of the building. Ellie asks Riley to hold the gun, and she briefly allows it, noting that it was given to her as a firefly. Riley explains that she joined the Fireflies while Ellie was in the burrow. A woman noticed her sneaking in one night and invited her to join the group after Riley expressed her opinion that Phaedra were fascist jerks. Ellie suggests that the Fireflies' view of Phaedra is too simplistic and that Phaedra actually holds everything together. Riley refuses to argue and instigates or jumps on roofs. When they stop to rest, they look at the new block of apartments, which, as Riley explains, was created by Phaedra for the new residents of the KZ. They again argue about the motives of Phaedra and the Fireflies, or cite as an example that the Fireflies blew up the warehouse and threatened the supply of the residents of the KZ. Riley points to the destination, the abandoned Liberty Gardens shopping center, which was allegedly closed due to the fact that it was full of infected. Riley points out that the mall isn't really closed anymore. They go inside, where Riley explains that the mall is connected to the same power grid that Phaedra installed for the new apartments. She turns on the electricity in the mall, and Ellie admires the colorful storefronts. Riley says she's at the mall, not just the two of us, and that she plans to show Ellie the 4 wonders of the mall. They find escalators, on which Alice immediately plays, which prompts Riley to jokingly declare that there are now 5 miracles. As they walk through the mall, Ellie looks at various storefronts, noting which ones have been looted depending on the need for their goods, and which ones have been abandoned. They look at the Victoria's Secret window and joke about how uncomfortable these products should be. Then Riley shows Ellie the second miracle, a working carousel. They climb on plastic horses and enjoy riding, drinking from a bottle of liquor, stealing glances at each other. The carousel breaks down, when Riley goes to fix her or asks if she really left to free the Boston goat. Riley claims that the fireflies and the other goats have set everyone free and are running things when the flashes. Ellie points out that Riley could still have done it if Phaedra had stayed, but Riley claims that she doesn't have the same Phaedra future as Ellie. She says that Quan gave her a sewer detail as a task, which prompted her to avoid and eventually join the fireflies. Then Riley leads her to the third miracle of the old photo booth. They take some stupid pictures together, but are disappointed to learn that the ink from 20 years ago is of poor quality and the photos turn out to be faded, although Ellie still decides to keep the sheet. Riley leads Ellie into Raja's Fourth Wonder arcade, filled with working video game consoles, including Mortal Kombat 2, of which they are both fans. They play several rounds of the game using an endless supply of coins from the slot machine that Riley hacked. Unaware of this, they attract the attention of a long-dormant infected person in another part of the mall. After Ellie finally makes a fatality, Riley tries to take Ellie to the next miracle, but Ellie suggests that she return to the dorm so as not to get into trouble, offering to pick her up the next day. Riley protests, offering to give Ellie a gift. She takes Ellie to the food court, where she discovers her living quarters in the kitchen of Taco restaurant and a copy of the book No Pan Intended, Ox, and the one she gives her. They share terrible puns with each other, and only then does Ellie notice a shelf full of bombs. Ellie, knowing that firefly bombs are being used to kill Phaedra's soldiers, realizes that Riley was actually directed to the mall by fireflies, and did not find it herself. Riley protests that she won't let the fireflies hurt Ellie. Ellie incredulously asks if Riley really thinks the fireflies will listen to her and breaks out. Riley chases her through the food court and informs her that he is leaving Boston. The fireflies send her to the Atlanta Goats. She tried to ask to recruit Ellie so they could go together, but Marlene, the woman who recruited her, refused her. The night at the mall was supposed to be the last opportunity to spend time together before she left. Ellie rushes away, but barely manages to reach the maintenance corridors before she changes her mind and returns to the mall. She hears distant screams and runs into a costume store, but discovers that the source of the screams was a Halloween display that Riley activated, which was supposed to be the fifth miracle. Ellie takes the joke book from Riley and complains that Riley came back to give her a fun evening, but left her again for a cause that she doesn't fully understand. Riley replies that Ellie doesn't know what it's like to have the family that Riley had, albeit briefly, and that she would like to have again for a long time. She suggests Ellie to do the last thing and gives Ellie one of the latex masks sold in the store. Then she connects Ellie's player to the store's speaker system, and they dance on the counter in masks to the song This Is James A Got You Babe. Ellie soon slows down her dance and takes off her mask while looking at Riley, prompting Riley to take off her own mask. Ellie begs Riley not to leave and kisses her. Their moment is interrupted when the infected break into the store. The couple runs away, trying to fight off the infected with Riley's gun and Ali's knife. After a fierce fight, manages to pierce his head. At first, she is elated that she killed one of them, but then she notices that Riley is looking at her hand. Looking down, she is horrified to discover that she has been bitten. Riley tearfully raises her hand to show that she too has been bitten. In the present, Ellie is frantically rushing around the house, rummaging through drawers, trying to find something that will help Joel. In the past, Ellie vents her anger in a shop window, which Riley watches. After she gives up, Riley offers two options for further action. The first option is that they use her gun and commit suicide, which, according to Riley, she does not like. The second option: wait out the infection and spend the rest of the time together. Ellie asks Riley which option is the third. Riley can only apologize while they hug. Ellie finally finds a needle and thread, which she realizes can be used to sew up Joel's wound. She goes down to the basement and silently assures Joel that she will not leave him, after which she begins to sew up his wound. At the Silver Lake Survivor community, leader and pastor David reads Revelations to the group. He notices that the younger parishioner Hannah is crying, and her mother Joyce is comforting her. He finishes the sermon addressed to her and expresses his condolences. Hannah asks when they can bury her father, Alec. After exchanging a glance with his lieutenant James, he replies that the earth is too cold and they will wait until spring. Outside, he asks James how much venison, moose, and rabbit meat they have left. James warns that they will only be able to survive on rations for a week, although some scouts have noticed deer in the mountains. David asks if James doubts his leadership. James swears allegiance to David, and they decide to go hunting. Ellie examines Joel's newly stitched wound and tries to give him water and food, but Joel remains unconscious. Hoping to get him some more food, Ellie goes hunting with a gun. After failing with the rabbit, she manages to fatally injure the deer, but it runs away before she can get to it. James and David find a deer carcass and decide to take it, but Ellie stops them at gunpoint. David offers to exchange the deer in whole or in part for something from the city. After Ellie asks for medicine, David instructs James to return to the city for penicillin and suggests that they should wait in the nearest ruins and build a fire. While they wait for James to return, David tells Ellie, who refuses to give her name, that before the outbreak of the epidemic, he was a math teacher, but found God and became a preacher. After the fall of the Pittsburgh KZ in 2017, he and some others left and created their own community, which he now heads. He is of the opinion that everything happens for a reason. As proof, he says that some time ago he sent a group to investigate a neighboring town, but one of them, Alec, Hannah's father, was killed by a madman who was traveling with a little girl, revealing to an alarmed Ellie that he knew who she was. James, who has just returned with the medicine, overhears this and rushes at Ellie with a gun, but David orders him to back off and give her the medicine. Ellie takes it and runs away, leaving James angry that they just let her go, knowing that she killed Alec. Ellie returns to the house and injects penicillin into Joel's wound, after which she goes to sleep next to him. In the kitchen at Silver Lake, Joyce is helping to cook dinner when a man, Josiah, appears with chopped meat, which he says is venison, and Joyce cooks it without a doubt. James and David come with venison. David reports that they have found a girl who was with the man who killed Alec, and declares that he will lead a group to find them and bring them to justice. Hannah screams that he should kill them both. David calmly approaches her and unexpectedly slaps her in the face, telling her to show him respect as the father of the community. Then he sits down to eat with the rest of the community. Most of the community eats vigorously, while James and some other men show reluctance. The next morning, Ellie injects another dose of penicillin to the still comatose Joel, and then goes outside to feed the horse. Noticing an alarmed flock of crows in the distance, she sees a search party led by David. David tells James that after they deal with Joel, they will bring Ellie with them. James doubts this, as Ellie may become another nursing mouth. David replies that she will die if left in the wild, to which James assumes that it is God's will. Ellie returns to the basement and will be Joel. She gives him a knife and explains that she will take David's men away, but Joel will have to defend himself if they get to him. Ellie gets on a horse and fires a warning shot at David's men, then drives off. James manages to kill the horse, sending Ellie flying. James and the other men surround the stunned Ellie, and they incite James to kill her. They are interrupted by an exasperated David, who orders James and another man to return to the settlement with him, and the others can search the houses in search of Joel. However, Joel manages to regain enough strength to ambush and kill Josiah when he enters the basement. Ellie wakes up in a cage in Silver Lake. David tells her that everyone wants to kill her, but he can protect her by offering her a new life with him. Joel knocks out 2 other men, Timothy and Mark, and ties them up in the house. He brutally tortures Timothy, demanding information from him about the whereabouts of Ellie and the settlement. In the end, Timothy says that this Silver Lake is a former resort that they captured. Joel forces Timothy to point out a place on the map, threatening that Mark will have to point to the same place. Timothy does so, but Joel kills him anyway, honestly noticing Mark that he believed him before killing Mark. Ellie tries to find a way to get out of the cage, but is horrified by what she sees on the floor. David arrives with food for her, but notices that she is looking at a human ear. David admits that the city resorts to cannibalism, although most residents do not know about it. He claims he's only doing what he needs to do to protect his community, just like Joel tried to protect Ellie, and indeed just like cordyceps is spreading. He tries to convince her to join him as the leader of the settlement, telling her that she has a cruel heart and therefore she is his equal. Realizing that there is something dangerous in his words, Ellie pretends to be interested only to break David's finger in an attempt to take his keys. Suddenly overcome with rage, David changes his mind about sparing her, declaring that they will give her to the city instead. Joel stumbles upon a silver lake. Noticing a trail of blood, he follows it to the city meat warehouse, where he finds Ellie's backpack and the remains of their horse. Having initiated him into the room, he is horrified to discover human remains hanging like meat. James and David pull Ellie out of the cage and prepare to kill her with a meat cleaver, but Ellie declares that she is infected. David puts down the cleaver and discovers a bite on her hand. Taking advantage of the fact that they were distracted by the discussion of the bite, Ellie grabs a cleaver and kills James, and then, narrowly avoiding David, discovers that the doors from the building are locked. David takes the cleaver out of James' body and follows Ellie into the dining room. She throws a piece of wood at him, which, narrowly missing, sets fire to the curtain, and the fire begins to spread slowly through the room, while David walks around, teasing her and threatening her more and more. Ellie stabs him with a knife, forcing him to straighten the cleaver, but he regains consciousness and kicks her while she is lying on the floor. He restrains her and prepares to sexually assault her, but Ellie manages to grab a cleaver and brutally kill him. Traumatized, Ellie stumbles out of the burning building, where Joel meets her. Joel comforts her by calling her baby by the same name he used to call Sarah. Together, hand in hand, they leave Silver Lake. 14 years ago, a heavily pregnant woman named Anna runs through the woods during labor. She stays at the agreed meeting place in an abandoned farmhouse, but finds no one there and she has to lock herself in a room. Hearing the screams of the infected outside the room, she arms herself with a knife and begins to give birth, while the infected runs in and rushes at her. Anya manages to kill the infected with a blade, and at that moment her child is born. Realizing that she was bitten during the fight, she quickly cuts the umbilical cord and picks up the baby, whom she lovingly calls Ellie. Later that night, Marlin and another firefly arrive to find Anna still holding Ellie in her arms. After learning about her bite, Anna, despite Marlin's doubts, insists that she cut the umbilical cord before she was bitten. Knowing that she will soon lose her mind from the infection, she asks Marlene to kill her and take Ellie away, making her promise to find someone who will take care of her. Marlin sadly gives the baby or the firefly, and then puts Anna to sleep. Nowadays, sullenly, Ellie goes with Joel to Salt Lake City. Joel, who has already adopted Ellie as his child, tries to cheer her up by reminding her of the happy moments of their journey by getting another jar of Chef Boyardee and offering to teach her to play the guitar. Ellie looks happy, but the events in Silver Lake still haunt her. Climbing an abandoned building in search of a way to the hospital, they stumble upon a giraffe and communicate with him, the sight of which briefly lifts their spirits. While they're admiring the view, Joel remarks that they don't have to go to the hospital, that they might as well go back to Jackson and reunite with Tommy. Ellie promises that she will follow Joel wherever he wants, but insists that they finish their journey first, claiming that they have gone too far and done too much to turn back. As they walk through an abandoned army hospital, Joel stops and tells Ellie the truth about the gunshot wound to the head that he had previously told her about. Instead of being killed in a fight, it was a suicide attempt caused by Sarah's death, as he once thought he had nothing left to live for. At the last second, he flinched. Ellie guesses that he's telling her this story to tell her that time heals all wounds, but Joel expertly tells her it wasn't time that did it. As they continue the conversation, he asks her to tell him some more unfortunate puns. Distracted, they don't notice the two guards chasing them until one of them throws a grenade and Joel soon passes out. Joel wakes up in the hospital, where he is met by Marlene, who expresses her stunned gratitude to him for accompanying Ellie. Joel asks to see Ellie, but Marlene says she can't take him to her, as she is preparing for surgery. The chief doctor believes that Ellie's immunity is caused by the growth of cordyceps, which has been in her since birth, releasing a chemical messenger that deceives the infection, making her think that she is already infected. The doctor hopes to reproduce the chemical messenger in the laboratory, which will allow the creation of drugs. However, Joel knows that cordyceps grows in the brain, which means that Ellie will die during surgery. Marlene insists they have no other options as Ellie is the only immune person they have found. She notes that she understands Joel's devotion to Ellie, because all these years ago he made a promise to Anna Keepers. She instructs two of her armed men to take Joel out of the hospital onto the highway, telling them to kill him if he tries to do anything. However, Joel manages to neutralize one of the men and kill both. Intending to save or at any cost, Joel breaks through the hospital, killing all the fireflies he meets on his way, including those who try to surrender. Arriving at the operating room just at the moment when everyone is ready, he demands that the surgeons unhook or from the equipment. The chief surgeon tries to threaten Joel with a scalpel, but Joel simply kills him, prompting the frightened nurses to obey. Joel picks up Ellie and takes her to the hospital garage, where he finds a car. However, Marlene stops him at gunpoint. Marlene insists that Joel can't protect her from trouble forever. In this case she has a chance to change the world for the better by her death. Joel objects that Marlene can't make this choice for her. But Marlene points out that Joel can't either, and they both know that Ellie would choose to sacrifice herself. She lowers the gun and offers Joel a chance to make the right decision. The scene switches to Joel calmly driving away from Salt Lake City. While he thoughtfully looks out the window or stirs in the back seat, still in a hospital gown and confused about what happened after anesthesia. Joel says that the fireflies found several more immune people like her, but the doctors couldn't make medicines, and they gave up. The hospital was attacked by raiders, and he had to flee with Ellie. Ellie asks if Marlene is okay. The flashback shows that Joel shot Marlene as soon as she lowered the gun. When he heard her struggling after she put him in the car, he came back to finish her off. Marlene begged for the last time to let her go, but Joel just told her that she would come for Ellie anyway and killed her. After a while, the car breaks down a few hours away from Jackson, forcing Joel to finish the journey on foot. As they walk, Joel tells Ollie about Sarah, commenting that they are both very different, but would like each other. When they approach Jackson stops. She explains to Joel her previous statement that she killed someone, telling him about how she and Riley were bitten at the mall, and admits that she was forced to kill Riley after she converted. She reminds him of how many people were killed because of their meeting, including Tess and Sam, and begs him to swear that he was telling the truth about what happened at the hospital. Joel tells her he swears. Even though Ellie knows for sure that he's lying, he just answers well.